Where do I even begin? As I sit here with history's unforgiving gaze upon me, I can already hear the whispers. Galba, the tyrant. Galba, the miser. Galba, the failed emperor. But before you, dear viewer, cast me aside as yet another footnote in Rome's relentless march towards oblivion, allow me to tell my side of the story. Perhaps you'll find in my tale not just a ruler out of his depth, but a man grappling with the treacherous tides of fortune, much like any of you might in your own humble lives. I was born Servius Sulpicius Galba in the year 30 BC, in the heady days of the Julian dynasty, when Augustus had only just begun to shape the empire that would dominate the world. My family, the Sulpici, were of patrician stock, old money, if you will, with all the pride and entitlement that comes with a lineage more ancient than the city itself. My father, Gaius Sulpicius Galba, was a man of tradition, whose idea of paternal affection was a curt nod if you managed to stay out of trouble. My mother, Mumia Achaika, was a different matter entirely. She could be described as a force of nature, I suppose. She was the kind of woman who could silence a room with a glance, which she often did usually, after I'd said something she found particularly stupid. It was Mumia who saw to my education, insisting I study with the finest tutors in Rome. Philosophy, rhetoric, and the art of war, I mastered them all, or so I was told. It didn't hurt that my mother had a certain persuasive quality about her, especially when discussing my future with the tutors. I dare say I could have mumbled my way through Cicero's speeches or botched a military maneuver, and still, they'd have reported to her that I was the next Alexander. Such was the life of a patrician youth in the shadow of the Roman Empire. But here's the thing no one tells you about being born into nobility. It's a trap. From the moment you're swaddled in your first toga, your life is not your own. You're a pawn in a game older than any of us, one where the rules change faster than you can keep up. And believe me, as you'll soon learn, even the most seasoned players don't always make it to the end. My early years were a tapestry woven with ambition and expectation. I was bred to lead, raised to believe that one day the power of Rome could be mine. My destiny was whispered in marble halls, in the hushed tones of senators and the eager voices of sycophants. But what they don't tell you about destiny is that it comes with strings attached, strings that, if you're not careful, will bind you tighter than the chains of a Gallic prisoner. So, was it my ambition that drew me into the deadly dance of Roman politics? Or was it the relentless pressure of expectation of a family that saw in me not a son, but a future ruler? Perhaps it was both. Perhaps it was neither. It's funny, really, how we spend our lives searching for answers to questions we never asked. And so, as the empire groaned under the weight of its own glory, I, Galba, took my first steps onto the stage of history, steps that would lead me to places I never wished to go and fates I never wished to meet. But that, dear viewer, is a story for another time. So stay with me. Because if you think this is just another tale of a Roman emperor's rise and fall, I promise you, it's anything but. Next, we venture into my early career. Spoiler alert, it involves betrayal, ambition, and yes, quite a bit of blood. My early career, a time when the naivety of youth meets the harsh reality of Roman politics. Picture this: Rome in all her grandeur, the Senate House teeming with plotting men, and me, Galba, still young enough to believe that virtue and honor might have a place in the tangled web of imperial ambition. How wrong I was. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. My rise began innocently enough, if you consider the chaotic theatre of Roman politics innocent. After my father's death, I found myself a ward of Livia, the formidable wife of Augustus himself. Imagine being under the watchful eye of the emperor's widow, a woman who wielded power more deftly than any man of her time. She saw promise in me, or perhaps she saw a pawn. Either way, I found myself on the path to greatness, whether I was ready for it or not. My early postings were typical for a man of my rank and breeding. Quaestor, praetor, governor titles that rolled off the tongue with a self-satisfied smirk, each one more tedious than the last. But they were stepping stones, you see, carefully laid out to lead me towards my ultimate destiny. And I was good at it. ruthlessly good. My administrative talents caught the eye of none other than Tiberius. I was named consul in 33 AD, a high honor, though I would later realize that such honors in Rome often come with invisible daggers at your back. It was during this time I first crossed paths with a certain young Nero, and let me tell you, from the very beginning, we didn't exactly see eye to eye. Nero, Nero! Even then, he was more actor than emperor, more poet than prince. He hated me, plain and simple. Perhaps he saw in me the stark contrast to his own decadent inclinations. Perhaps he simply didn't appreciate my, how shall I put it, distinct lack of tolerance for nonsense. But that hatred would prove to be a dark cloud over my ambitions, one that would loom for years. As governor of Hispania Tarraconensis, I had my first real taste of power. A province far from the heart of Rome, Hispania was a place where a man could make a name for himself or disappear entirely. I chose the former, imposing my strict, some might say draconian rule. I was hard on the legions, harder still on the locals. They would either learn to love me or fear me. And if you know anything about Roman governors, you know the latter is often far more effective. But it wasn't enough, was it? It's never enough in Rome. Power is an intoxicating drug, one that makes you feel invincible, even as it gnaws away at your very soul. So when the whispers came, those sweet, seductive whispers of rebellion against Nero, I listened. I would not say I was easily seduced by the prospect of power. No, let's give me more credit than that. It was more like a siren's call, one that promised not just power, but purpose. And if I'm being honest, it promised revenge. Nero's reign was in shambles. His excesses, his madness. Rome was a city on the edge, and the provinces felt the tremors. When the legions proclaimed me emperor in 68 AD, it wasn't a surprise. It was an inevitability. I marched on Rome, not with a grand vision of reform, but with the cold, calculated resolve of a man who knew he could do better, if only because it was hard to do worse than Nero. But the ascent to power is a bloody one, my friends. Allies were few, enemies many, and trust. Well, trust was a luxury I could not afford. Marcus Salvius Otho, who had once been a friend, turned coat at the first opportunity. I should have known better. A man who schemes against one emperor will surely scheme against another. And as I made my way to the throne, the bodies piled higher, both of those who opposed me and those who once called me friend. Looking back, I see those days for what they were. A brutal scramble for survival in a city that devours its own. If I could go back and change it all, would I? Who can say? Power changes a man, and the Galba who marched into Rome in 68 AD was not the same Galba who stands before you now. So here we are. I, the emperor. Nero dead by his own hand. The Senate cheering my name, the people crying for justice, and me wondering, as you must be, what comes next. Stay with me, dear viewer. The real drama is just beginning. Next, we'll dive into my reign and the treacherous months that followed. Spoiler alert, it involves betrayal, incompetence, and how could I forget? A gruesome prophecy that will haunt me to my dying breath. Oh, the sweet taste of victory. For a fleeting moment, as I crossed the threshold of the Palatine Hill and felt the weight of the imperial laurel upon my brow, I thought I had won. Rome was mine, or so I believed. I should have known better. They say absolute power corrupts absolutely, but they never tell you how quickly it also turns on you. The day I took the throne in June of 68 AD, the city was still reeling from Nero's chaotic departure. His mad reign had left Rome in shambles, her coffers drained, her people hungry for something, anything that resembled stability. I was to be their savior, the stern hand that would bring order to chaos, restore Rome to her former glory, or at least that's what they thought. From the moment I took the throne, the comparisons to Nero were inevitable. Oh, how they loved to remind me of his vices, his debauchery, his love for all things theatrical. He fiddled while Rome burned, they whispered, as if I could simply wave my hand and undo the damage of years. They wanted a hero, a restorer of Roman values, a second coming of Augustus himself. Instead, they got me, and I, in my infinite wisdom, made the fatal mistake of thinking they would love me for my austerity, my strict adherence to the old ways. Let me tell you something about austerity. It's just a fancy word for being a miser. And Rome, oh fickle Rome, quickly grew tired of my thrift. "He counts every coin twice," they scoffed, as if that was somehow worse than Nero spending their taxes on chariot races and golden statues of himself. I tried to make the hard choices, to cut the fat, to bring discipline back to the legions. But what did I get in return? Mutiny, unrest, and betrayal at every turn. It's almost poetic, isn't it? And speaking of betrayal, our Otho, my dear treacherous Otho. He had once been a friend, a confidant even. And yet here he was, lurking in the shadows, plotting my demise. I should have seen it coming. But trust, you see, is a dangerous thing. Otho, the snake, always hungering for power, ever the opportunist. I should have had him killed when I had the chance. But I was too cautious, too careful. And in Rome, caution is often mistaken for weakness. Nero hated me and was planning my assassination. Oh yes, I knew it. He wanted to rid himself of the one man who had the nerve to challenge his madness, his cruelty. But I was patient. I played the long game. And when the time came, it was not I who fell on the blade, but Nero himself. Poetic justice, I thought then. But my reign, it was anything but poetic. The moment I took the throne, the real work began, undoing Nero's messes, sifting through the ashes of his excess, trying to build something that might last. I cut back on the spending, cracked down on corruption, and tried to whip the legions into shape. And how was I repaid? With grumblings and discontent. You see, people don't want a just ruler, they want a generous one. They don't care if you're saving the state. They care if you're saving their pocketbooks. And then there was the matter of the Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers who were supposed to be my protectors. I tried to buy their loyalty with cold, hard cash, but the coffers were empty, and the promises I made rang hollow. They were used to Nero's lavish gifts, his golden coins stamped with his divine likeness. And what did I offer? Discipline and austerity. No wonder they turned on me. As the months dragged on, my grip on power grew ever more tenuous. The people, the Senate, even the gods seemed to conspire against me. Everywhere I looked, I saw enemies. In every shadow, a traitor. It was only a matter of time before the final betrayal came, swift and bloody. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Stay with me, dear viewer. The end is near, and it's a tale you won't want to miss. Next, we turn to my final days, the conspiracy, the betrayal, and the brutal end that awaited me. Spoiler alert, there will be blood. And as you'll see in Rome, there's never such a thing as a peaceful death. And so we arrive at my final act. The curtain draws near, the shadows lengthen, and I, Galba, stand on the brink of oblivion. It is the Ides of January, 69th AD, a date that will forever be marked in blood. My blood, death. It's the one thing we all have in common, isn't it? The great equalizer. Rich or poor, emperor or slave, the end comes for us all. But there's death, and then there's death. Mine, I'm afraid, falls into the latter category, a stark reminder that, in Rome, an emperor's end is rarely peaceful and never dignified. It was January of 69 AD, the so-called Year of the Four Emperors. I was in my 73rd year, hardly the age at which one should be dealing with rebellions and conspiracies. But then again, Rome was never one for respecting a man's twilight years. The city was a powder keg, and the fuse had been lit long before I ever took the throne. I knew the end was coming, felt it in my bones like a chill wind off the Tiber. The whispers grew louder, treachery, rebellion, the legions deserting me for Otho, that snake who slithered his way into their good graces with promises of gold and glory. You see, when you become Emperor of Rome, you might fancy yourself a god, but the gods have a twisted sense of humor. My death was foretold, you know. Some said I would not see my 73rd year. At the time, I laughed it off. 73? That seemed like a lifetime away. And then, suddenly, it wasn't. The plot against me began like all Roman conspiracies do in the dark. Otho, the snake I once called friend, was the ringleader. I should have seen it coming. His ambition was no secret. After all, he'd been a close companion of Nero, learning the art of backstabbing from a master. And now, here he was, doing what any good Roman does when he smells weakness, he pounced. The whispers grew louder. The praetorians were restless. Otho had promised them riches and glory, and what had I given them? Austerity and sermons on duty. Their loyalty, it seemed, was easily bought. The city crackled with tension. Every corner I turned, I felt eyes upon me, watching, waiting for the moment when the blade would fall. The morning of my death, I awoke with a chill in my bones. Some say I was forewarned by an ominous dream, others by a strange, gut-wrenching feeling of doom. Or maybe it was just the cold Roman winter, seeping into my old bones. The forum was unusually quiet that day, a silence so profound it seemed to echo through the marble halls. My advisors were unusually nervous, furtive glances, hushed whispers, and then came the messenger, pale as death itself. "Otho has been declared emperor," he stammered. "The praetorians. They have sworn allegiance to him." I didn't need to hear more. My fate was sealed. I had been emperor for barely 7 months, and now my own guard had turned against me. I knew then that running would be pointless. I was old, tired, and quite frankly, I was too proud to flee like a frightened rabbit. So I did what any self-respecting Roman would do. I stood my ground. The streets of Rome that day were a madhouse. As I made my way to the forum, I could hear the shouts of the mob, the clatter of steel on stone. It was chaos, pure and unbridled. And then I saw them, Otho's men. The praetorians who had sworn to protect me, now bearing down with murder in their eyes. Does it hurt? You might wonder. Yes, it does. When the first sword struck, I felt a sharp, burning pain, a pain that would only get worse with each blow. I won't give you the satisfaction of hearing me beg or plead. No, I faced my death as I had faced my life, with grim determination and a healthy dose of disdain for my enemies. They hacked at me like butchers, a frenzy of violence. I could feel the warmth of my own blood soaking my tunic, feel the strength leaving my body. And then, as quickly as it began, it was over. I lay there in the dust of the forum, staring up at the cold, indifferent sky. The mob surged around me, jeering, mocking. The praetorians, my killers, looked on with contempt. There was no dignity in my death. No grand, heroic end. Just a bloody, brutal spectacle, a fitting finale for a Roman emperor, some might say. I'd like to think I met my end with some measure of courage. But in truth, it all happened so fast, I barely had time to understand it was happening at all. And so I died, an old man on the cold stones of the forum, surrounded by a city that had already moved on. Otho was declared emperor, and the city roared with its approval. Such is the fickle nature of Rome, always eager for a new spectacle, a new emperor to cheer or jeer. I was yesterday's news before my body even cooled. But what is a death, if not a beginning of sorts? Stay with me, dear viewer, because next we shall explore my legacy, what I left behind, for better or worse, and how the empire moved on without me. Spoiler alert, the wheel of fortune spins on, and Rome's games are far from over. My legacy. Such a grand word for what is, in reality, a mess of contradictions and half-truths. The poets and historians, those vultures, descended upon my corpse before the blood had even dried, scribbling their biased accounts and moral lessons. Galba the miser, they called me. Galba the tyrant. It's almost funny, really. I was many things, but a tyrant? Perhaps they confused me with the men who came after, or perhaps they simply needed a scapegoat, a convenient villain in their stories of Roman glory and decay. I suppose my reign is best remembered for what came after. I was the first emperor in the year of the 4 emperors. What an honor! A year that saw Rome turn on itself with such ferocity. It's a wonder there was anything left standing when it was all over. Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian, each one scrambling for power, each one believing they could do what I could not. And yet look how they fared. Otho, who betrayed me, lasted a few months before taking his own life, unable to bear the weight of the crown he so desperately desired. Vitellius, the glutton, was dragged through the streets like a common criminal. And Vespasian? Well, I'll grant him this, he lasted a bit longer. But the empire he inherited was one I'd tried in my own way to save from itself. But let's be honest, my reign is not remembered for its triumphs. It's remembered for its failures. The people wanted a hero, a savior to deliver them from Nero's madness. Instead, they got me an old soldier with a penchant for discipline and a distaste for extravagance. I tried to bring order to chaos, but the chaos had other plans. The historians say I was too harsh, too frugal, that I failed to understand the needs of the people, that I was out of touch with the Senate and the legions. They might be right. Or maybe I was just a man trying to do the right thing in a world that no longer valued such things. My death, so brutal, so public, was the perfect ending to a story they'd already written. The old man, clinging to power, betrayed by his own, cut down in the forum like a common criminal. It's a good story, I'll give them that. But it's not the whole story. The truth, as always, is far more complicated. I was not the hero they wanted, nor the villain they painted me to be. I was simply a man, caught in a game that few survive, doing the best he could with what he had. And what of Rome? The city I tried so desperately to save? Did it remember me fondly? Hardly. But perhaps that's for the best. Perhaps my greatest legacy is not in what I did, but in what I tried to do. I tried to bring order to chaos, to restore a sense of dignity and discipline to an empire that had lost its way. I failed, yes. But in failing, I left a mark, a reminder of what could have been, of a Rome that might have been saved, had the fates been kinder. But enough of that. There's little use dwelling on what might have been. Let's move forward, shall we? Let's talk about the future, or at least, what the future held for those who followed in my footsteps. Spoiler alert. The empire survived, but not without a few scars. And as for me, well, I'm still here, aren't I? My name's still whispered in the halls of history, still debated, still discussed. In the end, that's all any of us can hope for, isn't it? To be remembered, to have our story told. In the next part, we'll look at the big question. Was my reign worth it? Spoiler alert. You might be surprised by my answer, so stay with me, dear viewer. The final act is upon us, and I promise you won't want to miss it. Was it worth it? A question every ruler, every emperor, every man at the end of his days must ask himself. I've had plenty of time to ponder this since my untimely demise, thank you for that, Otho, and my answer might surprise you. Or perhaps it won't. After all, what is the legacy of a man who ruled for a mere 7 months, only to be hacked to pieces in the forum by his own guards? The truth is, I didn't become emperor to bask in glory or revel in luxury. My soul was not ignited by dreams of absolute power or divine right. I took the throne to save Rome from herself, from the madness that had gripped her under Nero. I believed, perhaps foolishly, that one man could make a difference, that Rome could be restored to her former glory with a firm hand and an honest heart. I thought the people would appreciate a return to the old ways, to discipline, to order. I thought wrong. But still the question lingers. Was it worth it? The blood, the betrayal, the brutal end? Did any of it matter in the grand scheme of things? I think of the ideals Rome was founded upon: equality, liberty, the rights of the citizen. Lofty words for a city that would sooner tear itself apart than live by them. And yet, aren't those the same ideals we still strive for? Aren't those the principles that, in hindsight, make our struggles worthwhile? I won't pretend that my reign was a shining example of these virtues. My actions were far from perfect. My decisions were often ruthless, my judgments harsh. But I believed in Rome. I believed in the possibility of a better, more just society. I believed that with discipline and determination, we could rise above the chaos, the greed, the petty squabbles that seemed to define us. Perhaps that was my greatest flaw, a belief in the better angels of our nature, when history has shown us time and again that we are ruled by our demons. And yet, in that belief, there was a kernel of truth. Rome, for all her flaws, for all her blood-soaked history, was a place where greatness could flourish. A place where men, imperfect though they were, could strive for something higher. In the end, that's what I wanted for Rome. That's what I fought for, even as the knives closed in. Would I do it all again, knowing what I know now? It's hard to say. Power is a dangerous thing. It corrupts, it consumes, it destroys. But there's also something else, something that draws us in, that compels us to reach for the heights, even when we know the fall will be fatal. It's the promise of making a difference, of leaving a mark on the world, however small. And in that sense, perhaps it was worth it. Not for the glory or the power, but for the chance, however fleeting, to change things. To make Rome, if only for a moment, a place where equality, freedom, and justice weren't just words, but ideals worth dying for. And now, dear viewer, we come to the end of our journey. I hope you've enjoyed this little excursion through my life, my reign, my death. Perhaps you've even learned something, or at least found some entertainment in the recounting of my misfortunes. If you ever find yourself wandering the ancient streets of Rome, perhaps you'll think of me, of the old man who dared to dream of a better city. Visit the forum where my blood stained the stones. Stand in the shadow of the Palatine Hill where I once stood, full of hope and determination. And if you're feeling particularly bold, you might even consider collecting a coin or two from my brief reign, a tangible piece of history, a reminder of a man who tried and failed, but dared to try nonetheless. Thank you for indulging me in this tale. I hope it's been as enlightening for you as it's been cathartic for me. As you go about your lives, remember this: history is not dead, merely forgotten. It lives on in our stories, our memories, our choices. So learn from it. Embrace it. And in doing so, may you become better stewards of the world we share. Our channel, once known as the Renaissance Spirit, is dedicated to such pursuits, to a just, equitable, and compassionate world. We delve into the depths of history, politics, culture, and the human condition. We explore the ancient and the modern, the lost and the yet to be discovered. We strive for a world that understands its past to better shape its future. If that resonates with you, I encourage you to join us on this journey. Subscribe, share, engage with us in the comments. Let us know what you think, what you want to learn, what you hope to find. And remember, history is not just a collection of dates and names. It's a living, breathing narrative that shapes who we are and who we might become. So, be curious, be bold, be a Renaissance spirit. Vive Renaissance Spiritus. For in understanding our past, we find the keys to a better future. Take the quiz next to see if you too are a Renaissance spirit. And as always, may your pursuit of knowledge be ever fruitful, your love of learning never quenched. History has not died, only our understanding of it